for the last 5 years, Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay have dominated offense. Like they are the Bill Walsh of this generation. Every team wants their offense, and now it's everywhere. And suddenly, neither offense is that good. It's only 3 games in, but the Niners, real quick, the Niners are 24th in yards, and the Rams are 25th, which is quite interesting. And it seems to me a little bit of a phenomenon. It seems like not only have defensive coaches kind of got a feel for what the Niners and Rams are doing on offense, but defensive players. Just imagine how many of these guys face it in practice every day and on Sundays most of the time. As a former defensive player in the league, did you feel like you would get like the toughest offenses to face were the ones that you didn't see that much?
I think for anything, the new thing, right, and trying to figure it out,
yeah,
that's tough.
That's tough,
right?
Yeah.
And if you think back to the Seattle cover 3, that started to take over the NFL, where there were a lot of teams going to that single high. And I remember listening to Chris Sims. And Chris Sims, a lot of people kind of don't know about this part or forget about this, but he was a scout, and he was in the front office for the New England Patriots for a while. And he was in charge of charting things and breaking things down. Maybe he was an offensive analyst or whatever he was, but he had to break down things. And when he saw the Seattle defense, he didn't even know what it was. He's like, what is this? What is this revelation I'm looking at right now? And it caught a lot of people off because it's like, well, it's not a sky cover 3. It's not like a true zone, but it is because these guys are dropping, but then they're doing these match concepts, and it was something nobody had really seen. Yeah. And it was really difficult for some coordinators to really scheme up against. Well, once you have 4, 5, 6 years of seeing it, well, we have a lot of understanding of, okay, this is how we attack this. This is how we put that defense in a vulnerable position. They'll figure it out eventually. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing right now from Kyle Shanahan's offense, where he has these different things, and hey, this is really cool that you do this, and okay, the run games, and they're scheming things up, and everything's clicking and it's working. But now it's like, well, we enough teams around the league are doing it. They're stealing this just like they did the Seattle 3. Enough of his disciples are everywhere, and people are figuring it out. So unless you have this elite quarterback that can overcome people understanding it and knowing it, because again, the opportunities are there.
Right.
You watch all 22, you see the opportunities. It's having a quarterback that can take advantage of it. But even then, you're still working extremely hard. So you would think at some point right now, Kyle Shanahan and McVay have to come up with some kind of, all right, what's going to be our counter to what everybody knows what we're doing and what we like to do? Because right now, if you listen to the fan base, even if you listen to some people that know more about X's and O's, the play calling is getting a little repetitive and is getting a little predictable. Yeah. And I hate to say it like that as somebody that doesn't know exactly what their thought process is going into calling these plays, but just from the outside looking in, it doesn't feel like there's much variety to it.
Yeah, and if you look at like a team like Seattle, for example, their offensive coordinator came from the Rams. So their defensive players every day in practice are going against a version of the Niners and the Rams scheme. That helps. It's not just the coordinators, it's the players too. They've seen the same looks over and they see it from their own team. And what's interesting about the NFC West is every team in the NFC West has a better defense than their offense, I think. I don't know about Arizona. I don't know about Arizona, but the other 3 teams do. And they all have this same offensive scheme. I think it's really interesting. Defenses catch up. Defenses are really sophisticated too. And maybe McVay, let's look at McVay for example. Like McVay's offense is so simple to me. It's a one-back offense. Their run game has been crap for years. Ever since Todd Gurley went down, they haven't been able to run the ball in LA because they don't do anything. It's a one-back offense. They don't really have any sophistication in their blocking schemes. No H-back, no full-back. I don't like his offense. Right? Now it's like just one-dimensional passing, and they don't have the offensive line to really pull it off. Their offense isn't that great. And then we've been talking about the issues with Kyle. I mean, he lost Mike McDaniel, the Wizard of Oz, so both teams have issues on offense. Very interesting.
I think if you combine Shanahan and McVay's philosophies with how they run the offense, I think then you have something. But right now you have one that is way on this side of how he does it with 21 personnel. And then you have the other one that's way on the other side of doing it with his 11 personnel. And one that can't run the rock and then one that can until he can't because he can't really throw the rock. But if they combine what they do extremely well, now we're talking about an offense that most of the teams wouldn't have an idea of. Okay, now it's back to the drawing boards. How do we stop this offense? Right. But maybe you need McVay and Shanahan to come together on that.
But what's interesting, like through 3 games, like the offenses that are really doing well aren't necessarily from people from this tree. Like Detroit scoring 31 points a game. with some guy named Ben Johnson as their offense. Like, who the hell are you? And then, Nick Sirianni, not from this tree. He's doing well. It's interesting. Like, if you do something different, you might just have an advantage. It's not their fault that everyone copied them. They were good for a while.
Right. And then I think the two guys that you just mentioned, right, Sirianni, Philadelphia Eagles, you talk about the coach with the Lions, and they got Jared Goff. It's not like people viewed these guys heading into the season like, oh, man, these are just these great quarterbacks. And now they're playing well, so now it's like, is Jalen Hurts MVP? Like, y'all are not talking about Jalen Hurts like that for the last 2 years, right? But now, well, because of this offense and they're using his ability and he's making throws, things are wide open, easy reads, whatever, he's being able to execute it. Well, now he's making the offensive coordinator look good, and they're putting up a bunch of points. And same with the Jared Goff-led team. We've seen Jared Goff be able to play well. And there were times where I'm like, Jared Goff and Jimmy G, they're the same. Because people talked about Jared Goff like he was just trash. And I'm like, well, him and Jimmy, they're kind of almost the same person. And one has even been a little bit better throwing the ball with Jared Goff, like consistently.
Goff will throw it down the field.
Right. So I think there is some reinventing yourself, and I have to do that. I train athletes, and there could be times where I'm training athletes and I'm working on speed things, and then it can get repetitive. Or my defensive backs, and it's like, okay, well, we always work this same step replace or motor, and at some point you have to kind of mix it up and find a way to reinvent yourself. And when is Kyle going to do that? When is McVay going to do that? And we say McVay, but he's coming off of a Super Bowl win. But even then, I would say, last couple of games we saw him in the playoffs. Things do get tight, but between the Niners and Super Bowl, it wasn't maybe quite the offense we were expecting to see. It was probably below their averages for the year. So they got to reinvent themselves.
We saw this happen with Bill Walsh in the West Coast offense. When he took over, like no one had run offense like that. And it was extremely successful. It caught the league by storm. By the end, there were like half the league was running the West Coast offense because it was so successful. Defenses were much more prepared to stop. And by the end, he had a game, I think with Joe Montana, where they scored 3 points against the Raiders. Like there were games where Bill Walsh just got out-coached because his system got figured out. Now no one runs the West Coast offense like that anymore. This happens to even the best coaches in the league. You have a great idea. It gets copied. The league studies it for years, and it's just not as effective anymore. And so you can reinvent yourself, but how many times can you really reinvent yourself? Chip Kelly never did. He's at UCLA running the same stuff he ran in 2007. Anyway, sorry, Chip Kelly. I don't know why I did that. It was funny.
You're a UCLA guy, so
I went up to Quantrez Knight in the locker room. He's a cool guy. He went to UCLA. And I'm like, hey, Quantrez, do you know who the coach was of this team, the 49ers, before Kyle Shanahan? He was like, no, who? I was like, Chip. He's like, are you serious? So
he had no idea?
He had no idea, dude.
These players, a lot of them don't really watch football. And we used to do these things when I was with the Jets where it was kind of like this trivia, and they'd ask us questions. And me, I've always just been a super fan of football. Yeah. But you'd be surprised that these guys, they don't know who's in what division. Some of them don't even know. It's like, who's in the AFC East? And it's like, well, that is the Jets division. They're like, Chicago Bears? Like, there's guys, they don't watch football at all. I think Debo's one of those guys. I don't think Debo watched football.
I overheard Marcelino McCrary-Ball talking with, I think, Curtis Robinson. They were talking about college football. And McCrary-Ball went to Indiana, and Robinson, I think, went to Stanford. And I think McCrary-Ball was like, so who's in the Pac-12? Like, he didn't know what the teams were in the Pac-12, which was funny to me because, I don't know. But I guess, like, you didn't play the Pac-12. You probably played, like, Utah once or USC once. But he was like, so hold on. Who else is this? Like, yep, that's to your point. They just don't know. Sorry to call him out like that, Marcelino. All right. Isaac says Broncos all run similar. Oh, that's another thing. Nathaniel Hackett, he was with LaFleur at some point. He was with LaFleur, who was under McVay. I mean, if you probably counted how many teams in the NFL run a version of the Shanahan or McVay offense, it's like more than 10.
If you put Kyle Shanahan at the top, like you just put a picture of him, and then the coaches that are coming off of him, like his kind of tree, it can
gotta be at least 10. And the defensive too. It could get deep.